Right now, you probably have dozens of apps on your phone, thousands of movies and shows to watch, and endless videos to scroll through, yet somehow you still get bored. So here's a question most people never think about. What did ancient humans do when they got bored? Not ancient Romans, not Egyptians. We're talking much further back, 100,000. Or even 200,000 years ago, a time before writing, before cities, before technology, and even before language as we know it today. Just people sitting around with nothing important to do. The answer might completely change the way you think about creativity, religion, and even your own brain. But first, did boredom even exist back then? For a long time, scientists thought ancient humans were too busy surviving to ever feel bored. They imagined every day was spent hunting, gathering food, and finding shelter. But it turns out that's not true. In 1966, anthropologist Marshall Solins studied the Zhu-Huanzi people of the Kalahari Desert, whose lifestyle closely resembled that of early humans. What he discovered surprised everyone. They only spent about 15 to 20 hours a week finding food and doing essential work. That's not per day, that's per week. The rest of the time, they relaxed, talked, rested, and simply enjoyed life. In fact, they had more free time than many people today. So the real question isn't whether ancient humans got bored. The real question is, what did they do when they were bored? The first answer is simple. They played. And that may have changed human history. Around 75,000 years ago, someone living in a cave in South Africa carefully drilled holes into small shells and covered them with red pigment. These shells weren't tools, they weren't weapons, they weren't food, they were jewelry. Someone spent hours, maybe even days, drilling tiny holes through shells. Using only stone tools would have been incredibly slow and difficult. Yet they still did it. Not because they needed to survive, because they wanted something interesting to do. In many ways, boredom may have helped create art. The same thing happened with music. About 40,000 years ago, people living in what is now Germany created a flute from the bone of a vulture. It had finger holes and could play different notes. Imagine that. Before farms, before cities, before civilization. Someone picked up a bird bone and invented music. Not because they had to, but because they had time. Scientists believe our brains are naturally attracted to rhythm and patterns. Long before humans developed complex language, rhythm may have helped us understand the world around us. But boredom didn't just help create art and music. It may have created something even more important: imagination. Think about what boredom really is. To feel bored, you have to understand that time is passing. You have to imagine that something else could be happening instead. That means boredom requires the ability to think about the future. Now picture an early human sitting beside a fire at night. No work to do, nothing happening. Their mind starts wandering. What if tomorrow's hunt fails? What's beyond those mountains? Why do people die? What are those lights in the sky? Questions like these eventually became religion, philosophy, and science. They all started with curiosity. And curiosity often begins with boredom. Modern studies support this idea. Psychologists have found that bored people often become more creative because the brain starts generating its own entertainment. When there is nothing happening around us, the mind begins creating ideas on its own. But perhaps the most important thing ancient humans did when they were bored was talk. Not about hunting, not about food. They told stories. Stories about people. Stories about events. Stories about things they imagined. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar discovered that most human conversations are actually social conversations. People talk about other people. At first that sounds unimportant, but it wasn't. Our ancestors used stories and conversation to build trust and strengthen relationships. Before language, primates bonded by grooming each other. But grooming only works one-on-one. Language changed everything. Now entire groups could sit around a fire, share stories, laugh together, and build stronger communities. In a way, civilization itself may have started because people had free time and wanted to talk. So when we look back, a fascinating pattern appears. A bored person made a bead. A bored person made a flute. A bored person looked up at the stars and wondered why they were there. Some of those questions became art. Some became religion. Some became science. And some became the ideas that shaped the modern world. Today we rarely experience true boredom. Whenever there's a quiet moment, we grab our phones, we scroll, we watch, we listen. We distract ourselves. But psychologists have a name for what happens when we never stop consuming information. It's called cognitive overload. When the brain is constantly stimulated, it never gets enough time to process, reflect, and create. Interestingly, the part of the brain linked to creativity, self-reflection, and empathy becomes most active when we're doing absolutely nothing. When we're bored. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans used quiet moments to think, imagine, and create. Then smartphones arrived, and silence became something we constantly try to avoid. But every time you put your phone down and allow your mind to wander, you're doing exactly what your ancestors did. The same thing that created the first piece of jewelry, the same thing that created music, the same thing that inspired humans to look at the stars and ask questions. Boredom didn't stop ancient humans from becoming great. In many ways, boredom is what made them human. And maybe, if we allow it, it can still do the same for us today.